What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Roach coming at you with another video. Sorry it's taken a while to create one because I've been busy. Life and its quarrelsome quirks. So get back into the swing of things. And today's video, I got asked to do this, and this is going to end up being a series. It's going to have its own dedicated playlist. I'm going to talk about how private security is set up, initial training, what you might call it, it's quote unquote basic training, you might say, here in the state of Oklahoma. And I'm going to break it down just kind of briefly. Anybody that wants to get into it, check out your local VOTEX. Here in Oklahoma, I think Security Officer Requalification Training Center is probably the best one. I've done some of my continuing education training through there. It's second to none. And they also do the complete, entry level and basic education to get into the field. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go to this little slideshow that I've prepared. And stand by. Here's the title of it that I've set up, and it's Private Security Basic Training, how it's broken down. And I've taken it's from the sources I took from this is from about 1990s, and it may have changed a whole lot since then, but this is how I had learned it at the time. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to try to move forward. All right, here in Oklahoma, it's broken down into phases. Phases 1 and 2, that's a 1 week or a 40-hour course, covers your basic security guard, how the functions of it, from how to write reports, the phonetic alphabet, and the basic uniform, things of that sort. Phase 3 is a private investigator. That's also a 1 week course where you learn a lot about civil law. And civil law and torts, civil investigation, surveillance, things of that. So that's where you see a lot of that come into play here in the state. Phase 4 is firearms training. It's a 32-hour course. It does involve some range time and qualification on the weapon you're going to carry during the scope of your employment. They have passed a bill where you have to requalify every year on the weapon you're going to choose to carry in your scope of employment. Phase 5, this is the newest phase. This was introduced, I want to say, I'm not really certain, I want to say about the middle 2013, 2015, could be sooner than that. I'm not certain on that. So anyway, that's kind of the layout in the phases. And we're gonna here in the next one, we're gonna talk about kind of what phase 1 and 2 is. Phase 1 and 2, this is kind of as I went through it, and it's some good foundations. You want to write when you're doing whatever scope of your duties is. Like I learned early on how to use a fire extinguisher, how to write good field notes. You learn the phonetic alphabet. That's used in law enforcement, and then right here in the report writing, there's 6 questions I learned pretty much early on when I'm writing incident reports. Who, what, when, where, how, why. And it goes into a little bit about your legal powers. And I'll give you a case in point. A lot of people get in this profession get real excited because they get the power to arrest. Here in the state of Oklahoma, you do not have any special powers in this state. You're pretty much a glorified civilian with a firearm and carrying a uniform. That's basically how it works. But I know some of you are saying this, but I can make arrests here in Oklahoma. It's called a citizen arrest. And in the next series of in some subsequent videos I'll be producing, I'm gonna ask some questions. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because what I found early on in this profession, security guards get a little bit rambunctious and they get very overbroad, and generally law enforcement doesn't like you. It's pretty simple. It's pretty. I've been around those that they just don't like me just because reasons, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. But I got a great relationship with law enforcement. Okay, you do. Okay, more power to you. But for the most part, security is very looked down on by law enforcement and by the general public. And in subsequent videos, I'm going to show my experiences and share my thoughts and how that can change. We've always done it like this. Well, why do you have the turnover that you have? Think about it. Anyway, in the rest of this slide, public appearance, make your uniform look sharp. I have heard, this is going to be another video, but I'll just touch briefly on this. A lot of people have variations on uniform. Probably where you want to wear a polo versus tactical versus Class A. I think a lot of that depends on the post. I'll give you a case in point. When I worked a lot of outside posts, I like wearing a polo, and because I have a bike, I can ride around, patrol my property. I get a good workout. It's a little bit cumbersome wearing a Class A, and which that has its place. I like Class A's in an office setting or an indoor setting. But if you're working in an apartment complex or something like that, you want to dress like you want to intimidate. But that's my opinion. You guys have yours. Everybody's entitled to it. That's what makes this profession so unique. Types of post. You got a fixed standing. You might work in I don't know, for standing posts, you may work in an office, you may be a receptionist, or you may work in a grocery store, or, what have you, a large office building, and things of that sort. And then you got patrol. You're riding your patrol car doing basic same things what law enforcement does. You're answering noise complaints. You're answering some disturbances. I've been on a lot of those, including a couple of shots fired calls. Security guards are going on them if you do patrol. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And then when you're doing a shift report, something I learned very early on, you write it in black ink. I've been told that's the only ink admissible in court. But I don't know if the laws have changed here in Oklahoma, but that's kind of as I learned it at the time. Now, moving on, I touch a little bit further on calls for service, and that can go to fixed and standing. Could be noise complaints, safety hazards. I've patrolled a property where it was a university where I wrote up a report for a safety hazard. You're not always going to get the grandiose, oh, I made an arrest and all of that, and look at what I did, Mom. It's going to be something simple as that. At one property I did, I found a sponge and it ended up being a water leak. And I had to get a hold of maintenance in the middle of the night to do, hey, look, I got a sponge around, and turned out being an incident report, and I got some props from that from the university, because I found it, saved them some money. And bomb threats, you're going to have some. This was covered initially in training. You're going to have special procedures. You always take them serious. Law enforcement's always going to get notified, and you do an orderly evacuation of the post, where it is you're working. Now, phase 3, private investigator. I just briefly listing some of the duties you're going to do there: surveillance, background investigations, attorney-client. That has an attorney like an attorney-client privilege. And overall, you could be considered detective. I think it's more along the lines of corporate security nowadays, but there's a section for it here with CLEET, and I'll just I may touch more about it in a later video. My mouse will work. Phase 4. This is a big one. A lot of people get happy about this one because, look, Mom, I'm carrying a firearm. Okay, whatever. And I got taught very technique, how to present your firearm, procedures, securing your weapon. I got taught how to present it to your instructor. That's a big deal, you know. And there may be a later video, and might use some of my security officer buddies, kind of how to demonstrate that. And legal issues and deadly force. I'm going to talk about one in the adjacent in my next slide. I'm going to talk about that. At the time, we were carrying revolvers. Nowadays, we're carrying semi-autos. I went through a revolver qualification and a conversion training, and and it's kind of stepped on. Well, a lot of cases coming out that's happened recently that you want to be able to know your targets, and you'll be able to shoot. You're going to hit your target. You're not going to hit an innocent person. And here's a note underneath on this slide, which is determined by employer for said post. What that means is this: yeah, you may be licensed armed, but that employer may, for that assigned post, employer says, well, we don't want anyone unarmed. Know your limits on that when you want to work unarmed versus armed. That's got to be, ultimately it's going to be up to you. Shotguns and long rifles. There is shotgun qualification training for a pump 12 gauge. Rifles has been passed, but it hasn't been implemented from the advisory council, at least not yet. I don't know that. Anybody that watches this video, you know that, please upload it in the comments. And for the last slide I want to talk about, this is that's the same here with phase 4, deadly force case law. And there's going to be subsequent videos I'm going to be making talking about this very thing, because there's a lot of videos out there covering this, and I'm going to be talking about it. The one thing that I'm talking about is Tennessee versus Garner. I'm going to read it here. Under the 4th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, a police officer may use deadly force to prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect only if the officer has a good faith belief that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or others. And I put a link to that. I'll probably put a link to this in the description of this video if you want to refer back to it. Now, under that, it says police officer. Well, what about private security? Same principle, as I understood it at that time, same principle does apply. But here's the kicker. When you're getting offset, and you got that person off their post and he's outside, okay, all bets are off. The laws nowadays have changed where the general public is carrying. And that's where the general public, okay, let's say you got John Doe in a street just kind of down the corner. Okay, you as a security officer have bad guy off your property. Then John Doe sees bad guy, okay, he's got a firearm. Okay, John Doe can, based on reasonable, he can see, okay, he's got it in his hand, which I believe that's brandishing a firearm if he has it in his hand. But if it's in his holster, that's a totally different deal. But if he has it in his hand, that's reasonable to say he may be doing something with it. And, okay, John Doe can do whatever he wants to do. Each case is going to be different, and it's going to be subject to interpretation by the courts. Just something to keep in the back of your mind. And for the last slide, phase 5. This is a relatively new one. This is covering bail enforcement. This came as from a result of some, I'm not exactly certain what this came about to, but bail enforcement didn't have a lot of regulation before this got passed. I could be wrong on that. Anybody knows more? Anybody knows? Feel free to put it in the comments, and we'll all learn from it. So that being said, let me get back here. That's just a general synopsis of kind of how the private security education and training came down here in Oklahoma, at least as I learned it at the time. That's been, what, almost 30 years ago. It's probably changed a lot since that time. If it has, I'd be interested to hear about it. I'm not sure how I know other states have their own sources of training at how they do it. But that's kind of how it is at the time. Now, in subsequent videos, we're going to talk about when the training's right and when the training is wrong. There's a lot more wrong I've seen out there than it is right. And with that being said, I'm going to end the video on this note. Trust is earned, loyalty is returned. And if you like the content, feel free to give this a like, comment, and subscribe. If you got a video out there you'd like for me to cover on this channel, feel free to drop it to my email address. And with that being said, I'm going to end it on this note. Keep calm, chive on. See you guys on the next video.